It's time for The World This Week, 7 days for Paris-based correspondence, 1 hour with us. Vivian Walt of Time Magazine, how are you?
Very good.
We welcome Toni Cruanyes of Catalan broadcaster TV. How do you say it?
TV3.
TV3. Oh, just like in Spanish.
Yeah, exactly.
Same as in Spanish. Okay. Christian Macarian of the French newsweekly magazine L'Express. Welcome to the show. Welcome as well to Thomais Papaionou of, how do you say, CYBC?
Exactly.
It's just CYBC.
And ERT, the Greeks.
And ERT. You do both Cypriot and Greek
public
television. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for weighing in on the conversation on the World This Week's Facebook page and on Twitter. Our hashtag is TWTW. 2 decades after the Cold War, should we once again be worried? The brewing war of words and chest thumping between North Korea, its new 30-year-old leader, Kim Jong-un, on the one hand, and Seoul, Tokyo, and Washington on the other, is raising alarm bells. Now, seen from Paris, the images from Pyongyang State Television seem like they're from a time capsule, and there is the temptation, it is true, to poke fun when you see images like that of the Supreme Leader going on an inspection tour of a strategic island. Okay, we did poke fun. In fact, we can tell you that we had a caption contest on our Facebook page. Inside of the newsroom, Karim came up with The Love Boat, Mary to Infinity and Beyond. Douglas Herbert came up with Air Force Un. But the winner is Edward Newman with Kill the Person I Am Waving To. Many, however, though, fail to see the funny side of saber rattling. North Korea shutting down trade with the South, threatening to reopen a nuclear complex and warning it could hit Hawaii or Guam with ballistic missiles. When you look at this story of Vivian Walt, it feels like a time capsule in more ways than one. People are really starting to ask, like in the old days of the standoff between the United States and Soviet Union, could this all escalate and go very badly?
Well, I think every time you're talking about nuclear weapons, the answer has to be yes. And unfortunately for the US and for the rest of the world, they have to err on the side of caution. How much of this is bluster? Nobody quite knows. You have two leaders, North and South Korea, who are both very new to the job and very untested, one of whom is extremely young. And so you have this element of unpredictability where your normal intelligence services and so on don't quite know what to expect of these two men and how serious this war talk is. What's so interesting talking about a time capsule is that so much of the world's focus as regards to nuclear threats has been on Iran for the last few years, and almost to the exclusion of the Koreas, actually. People seem to have somehow diverted away from thinking about the North Korean threat. And I guess this week, if nothing else, has sort of shown that really you can't afford to forget about it too long.
Christian Macarian, should we be afraid?
Well, I think we should, not necessarily because of the threat of the speech of Mr. Kim Jong-un, which is in a way usual, but on the fact that Mr. Kim Jong-un looks very unexperimented, and his grandfather and his father knew the limits. They used the same kind of words, exactly the same kind of threats, but they had an internal calculation, which is still very obscure. But we knew that there was a point where they stopped when they had achieved their objectives. What we don't know now with Kim Jong-un is what he's looking for. We are obliged to make a lot of speculations, and this is in itself dangerous because there is absolutely no information. And we know that.
That's interesting. For all the talk of trade opening up with between the two Koreas over the past decade, of the fact that there are more people who go there, we still don't know what's going on in Pyongyang.
No, I think the most important direction is Beijing. We have to reconsider the relationship between Pyongyang and Beijing. I think all what happens now is based on this couple China and North Korea. Probably Kim Jong-un and all the people around him, of course, want to force China to support more and more North Korea, which is not the interest of China today. This has changed. And we've seen in the UN a significant change. China voted for the sanctions against North Korea. And it is very significant. So I think that we have to replace all these threats in a big strategic game.
All right, so China, which also, by the way, has just had a change of leadership, although it's perhaps a lot more fluid than it is in North Korea, often depicted China as an ally of North Korea, wrongly, say some, with Beijing at times in its statements openly wary.
We
noticed North Korea's statement, which we think is regrettable. The present situation is complicated and sensitive on the Korean peninsula. We call on all sides concerned to stay calm and restrained, to restart dialogue and negotiation.
All right, keep a cool head. Tony Kriandis, nonetheless, there are some people questioning not China, but the United States for taking part in these military exercises with South Korea, saying you shouldn't be flexing muscle now, you should be trying to calm the North Koreans down.
Yeah, but the thing is that for decades, when we've been talking about the tensions in between the North and the South in the Korean Peninsula, we were actually talking about a war by delegation. That is China and the United States trying to muscle up in the area and seeing what was the point of each one. The thing, as you all said before, is that the relationship in between Pyongyang and Beijing, we don't know how fluid it is. For what we've heard just now, it seemed like, at least officially or in public, they were trying to point out that they were not agreeing with what's going on in Pyongyang. But at the same time, we hope that actually they are walking in the same wave. The truth, though, is that we don't know to what extent it's under control or not what's going on in Pyongyang. It's true that the new leader is very young. We don't know exactly if he knows what's the limit, until where he can go when he gets his flag out of the closet just to turn his people around. The thing is that I don't know if it's really a political coup, thinking about maybe its own people in terms of, I don't know if you remember, but the curiosity at the beginning about his personality, we talked about him being so pro-Western in terms of culture,
yes.
In his ties to
I would
the...
make a difference between the escalation, to follow you, between the escalation, which is usual, and the goal, which we don't know.
Exactly.
That's the point.
Yeah. We don't know exactly to what extent this is going to be something just
paradoxically
for internal consume, or it's definitely something serious.
Paradoxically, we have much more information about China than about North Korea. And China is clearly very embarrassed this time.
Very embarrassed. And we're also seeing, just one final point on all of this, we're seeing strong words from the Japanese as well. The Japanese who've perhaps grown more bold in their defense policy. As a result, again, it's a cocktail that's a little bit worrisome. Are you worried when you look at this, Tamais?
How couldn't I be? But actually, as I absolutely agree with you, that we don't know what's the goal behind all this. And probably to negotiate, they have a starving situation in North Korea. They have multiple problems. They can not go ahead with their negotiations with China. It's so complicated. And actually, I thought his wife was pregnant. So I thought he was like into another universe when he started menacing the world. So I was really surprised, as you said, that he had a mobile phone next to him in a photo. He was in another universe, and all of a sudden he's treating the world as his father used to do it. And actually, because you said he's so unexperienced, we don't know what he's at to.
All right, we'll continue.
I think just one of the problems that we might have with North Korea is that at one point they might have an implosion because the system is not working. But at the same time, the problem that it could make for both the neighbors, China and South Korea, and of course for the States and the whole world, the situation would be so unstable that I think that at some point there are things going on inside in trying to point the leader, even if it's just to keep it going, to keep it going and not provoke any kind of situation which could be dangerous. Exactly right now with South Korea and Japan being so nationalistic in their political words against China, which is as well doing the same.
All right, final word on this from Vivian Walt.
I think one thing it has pointed up this past week is just how the U.S. policy on the Koreas has so many holes in it. I mean, they have, raced through their missile defense system, which they're going to position in Guam, but they really don't have much of a strategy in order to deal with North Korea.
You feel like they're ad-libbing this week when it comes to their policy?
It seemed very, very much so. And it didn't seem as if they really had much of a in order to reach the North Koreans. I mean, at some point you have to engage with people. And this is, of course, the conclusion they've come to with Iran.
All right. So we'll see how that develops and the next move of the 30-year-old Kim as it proceeds forward from the new Cold War to a deep freeze of a different sort. They haven't been in office for a full year yet, but the approval ratings of the French president and his prime minister falling to what Americans call Nixon numbers. This after the political tsunami that rocked Paris this week. Now, just a few weeks ago, the then budget minister, the man who's in charge in this country of rooting out tax cheats, took to the floor of Parliament to deny stashing his personal savings in Switzerland and Singapore.
I do not have, nor have I ever had, offshore accounts. Not now, nor ever.
That's pretty definitive. Of course, on Tuesday, he suddenly caves in and confesses. It's incredible. How can you stand on the floor of Parliament and say that?
And lie like this. I think this is something that shouldn't be allowed by law.
In France, the president and all the institutions are not based on the Bible, and what shows this terrible week is that the intrusion of lie on the political scene is something new in France, because lying, I'm really sorry to say this, but is part of the political art in this country. This time, this lie will not pass. Something has happened which is very important. Paradoxically, Mr. Cahuzac was considered seriously, and there was very good reasons for that, as a very competent man. And he was the only one...
He obviously knew where the bodies were buried when it came to tax evasion.
Who pleased the right, and there was a consensus about him. He was a clever man, and he was very competent, and he has shown his competence in the past at the head of the Commission of Finance in the Parliament, in the National Assembly. So this man is really a terrible failure for François Hollande. One, because he was competent and he's not there, and two, because for the socialist, and especially for François Hollande, he is now facing the question of honesty in politics. And all his campaign, his presidential campaign, was based on this question of honesty. So it's a contradiction for him that he has now to resolve.
All right, so this is beginning to unravel for the president. Do you agree, Vivian Walt, that this is not the Cahuzac affair, but the Hollande affair?
Oh, completely. Absolutely. And just taken in a broader context, I mean, you have so many people in France who are really hurting economically. They're really feeling the pain of the recession. And here you have a, high-level public official who has stashed away, well, the little we know is a considerable amount of money. Probably there is more. And just I think the sort of level of feeling insulted among French people is quite high. They're outraged, they hate the lying, but on top of it all, there is also the feeling of very rich people at the top who get away with things that they cannot get away with.
Thomas Papayan, in Greece, you're further along with there's what was called the so-called Lagarde list. She was then the finance minister. She handed over this USB key
Absolutely.
to the then finance minister, saying, "Hey, we got some names of tax cheats on here," and
they hide it.
Lo and behold, it sat in a drawer for a very long time. How has that affair dented the credibility of politicians just as a whole in Greece?
Well, they lost their credibility long time before the Lagarde list.
So this was just another drop in-
exactly. It was, and as we see now, still we haven't found the real names of the cheaters, the tax evaders. Still, we know nothing about those people. We're still in investigation. 2-3 years after the list was handed to the then Greek government.
Will we ever see it?
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I don't think so, honestly, because there are big names inside that list.
Whereas I guess the difference here, Tony Kyrianis, is there is a name. And Jérôme Cahuzac, interestingly enough, it was an acrimonious divorce with his wife at the start of this. They had built up a successful hair transplant clinic. Worked with pharmaceutical firms, and then when it comes time to divvying up the wealth, things start to unravel.
Well, I have to say that I think what is new now about Cahuzac, it's not the lie that he said in the parliament, but that she actually confessed. I think that's the big news in truth, because I mean we've seen other cases, different cases, I'm sure, but the most recent one was with Eric Berth. The old government had somebody who actually was involved apparently in something that could develop. I'm saying this because it's that could develop into illegal finance of a campaign. Okay, but we had somebody who said no, and then at the end he ended up in court. Now we are seeing somebody who said, well, yes, what happened is exactly that. And this, I think this is what's really new.
The big difference being that now the big confession. We'll pick up on that point when we come back. Stay with us. We're going to continue on this in the world this week, and also tell you how some people are trying to plug an alternative to the euro. Stay with us.